these questions to the panel. Now, some people on the panel maybe know Brendan better than others. But we'll see how well you know him. So, I think Miles knows this one. Brendan fell in love with engineering while using his first computer. Which one was it? Okay, what is it, Miles?
It's A, Commodore 64.
Is it?
D, none of the above. It was a Commodore VIC-20.
Oh, good question.
Program on the 64, but I played Seawolf on the VIC-20.
So, according to the answers, it is D, none of the above. It was a Commodore VIC, what was it? 20. Okay. Could you put your hands up if you know what that machine is? It's the people at the back. That's strange, isn't it? People at the back who should have worse eyesight.
Exactly, yeah.
All remember what that could be.
95% credit.
Okay. There it is. We have. Oh right. Okay. So Brendan learned the value of teamwork. What? As a youngster by playing his favourite sport. Swimming, football, or hockey.
He likes watching hockey.
Bill says are you going to go with that answer?
Okay, sure.
Okay. Bill says hockey. The answer is hockey. Yes.
Wow, okay.
So one to Bill, one to Miles. By the way, anyone else is welcome to shout out with the answers. While other teenagers waited tables or mowed lawns, one of Brendan's first job titles was paintball gun technician. Is that a red herring? Because it is so believable. Barista or pizza delivery driver?
Paintball gun technician.
Okay.
I have to go with that.
John has taken the bait and is correct.
Yay.
Paintball technician. So we've got 3 in the lead on 1.
Neither did I, actually.
Brendan's name for the MongoDB Scala driver is a nod to this musical act. I think the audience might have an idea.
Is it A?
Do you want to ask the audience?
Yeah.
Who in the audience thinks it's A? Who in the audience thinks it's B? Who in the audience thinks it's C? Okay, Miles, which would you like to pick?
I'll go for A. I'll go with the audience.
Is that your final answer?
It's my final answer.
Okay, the answer is A, The Clash, with Casbah. And there is Brendan. While away from home, Brendan has enjoyed all of the following culinary masterpieces except deep fried haggis, spaghetti with ketchup, or whale carpaccio.
B.
John's going B, spaghetti with ketchup.
I know for a fact he has enjoyed A.
I'm going to go with C.
I'll go with D. None of the above.
So how does that work? He's enjoyed everything except none of the above.
Okay,
too many negatives in there.
Yeah.
I think John was first with B. That's incorrect.
Armenian.
What?
David Ketchup was in Armenia.
Okay, any
I go with C.
C. Also incorrect.
Really?
Anyone else? Eugene.
Somebody, you need to get some points.
Oh my god, what was that?
Don't let Dmitry steal it.
Maybe A?
A is the correct answer.
No way, he told me he ate deep fried haggis. What was that?
He probably told you he wanted deep fried haggis.
But it wasn't the whole egg.
Oh, it was a part of it.
Oh, we're on to subtle details
That's
now.
what D meant.
Yes.
Oh, we're already on the next question. Brendan's car is easily spotted in San Francisco. Just look for this custom license plate.
It's B, isn't it?
I11I1I1I. Does anyone know? Is that binary for some number? If you replace the ones with
Zeros.
the i's with zeros and the ones with ones. B, monadic, or C type class.
I'm going to go.
But Miles,
I think it's B.
is that what you would choose if you had a car?
I think no, I go with A. If you like.
Okay. No. Anyone else?
Yeah,
Anyone else?
it's on the screen.
That's not it.
But I said that.
You did, but you changed your mind.
I didn't. You asked me if I.
Oh, if you had a go. Oh, I see. Sorry.
It's too late. He's already wrong.
Does anyone remember what the scores are?
I'm losing.
Okay, I'm not sure. I think Dima has yet to answer one. I'm gonna give Dima first choice on this one. Which of the following items of clothing is not currently in Brendan's closet? T-shirt featuring an offensive print. Well, I mean, they might not currently be there because he's wearing them. Silk tie, or a Pittsburgh Penguins jersey.
I'll go for C.
Correct, a Pittsburgh Penguins jersey.
Yeah.
There is Brendan wearing a silk tie. Did anyone get that? Okay, we'll tell Mike.
Oh, I don't think I've ever put T-shirts in my closet. They belong in like the handbook.
Okay. Brendan's molecule tattoo is C8H10N4O2, better known as...
C. Caffeine.
We've... C?
C.
Caffeine? Correct.
Okay.
I think you're winning now, John.
No.
There it is. That is what you've been drinking today. Finally, cartoons aren't just for kids. This animated series is one of Brendan's all-time favourites. You've got the U in brackets this time. Last time we had the word favourite, it had a U in brackets. A, Futurama. B, Metalocalypse. Or C, Rocco's Modern Life. Does anyone know what all of those are? Is there anyone who knows what
There's a
all of
hand
those?
up there.
Okay. Is it Brendan's?
No.
Any takers?
A.
A. Correct. So I think Dmitry has 2 points. Eugene has 1. Miles has 3. Okay, you said 3. I trust you. John had 2, I think.
We'll just call it 4.
4, and Bill is the winner with 8. So, congratulations.
Hang on. How many questions were there?
There were 8.
And how many points were scored?
8 by Bill. I don't know. there may have been flaws in this in accounting for the points. So I would like to first thank you Mike for that. That was payback for last year when I think Brendan did something special for Mike on his birthday.
I feel like we should replay that video. Mike and I had the same birthday.
Mike and Brendan were born on the same day. Not in the same hospital in the same town or the same country. Okay, but nevertheless, they are exactly the same age and work for exactly the same company. What are the chances? You can work it out. Anyway, we have work to do. We have a panel here. I'd like to introduce them. My far left is Bill Venners, everyone's favourite Uncle Bill. Bill is the community representative at the Scala Centre Advisory Board. That's a new role you've taken on recently.
Yep.
And we've had 2 meetings so far. How's that been?
It's been very interesting. Yeah, it's been good. Hello.
Yeah,
that's been good. So actually, I'm supposed to. My job is to listen to people. So if anybody has a complaint, then I'm. It's actually my job to listen.
Okay.
So you know.
Bear that in mind. Speak to Uncle Bill. To my left is John Goes, founder of Slam Data, previously Precog, LambdaConf, and more recently the Fantasyland Institute of Learning.
That's right.
Where did you get the names from?
Random places, but I think I had a hand in all of them. Actually, one of our investors chose Precog.
Ah, right. Okay.
But it's Fantasyland. That came from actually the fact that many times people point to functional programming and they say, that's just Fantasyland. And I'm like, okay, maybe that's a good name for a nonprofit dedicated to education in computer science and math.
And the unicorn, the flaming unicorns, just followed naturally from
Exactly, Fantasyland.
that, as they would.
Exactly.
Excellent.
And I like unicorns. So.
Who doesn't?
Who doesn't?
To my immediate right is Miles Sabin. It says here, type astronaut. I believe is still true, given some of the work that Miles has churned out over the last, well, certainly some significant things in the last few months, but over the last 12 years or so, I think you've been working with Scala now.
That's right. Yes. I guess I like type astronaut. I think it was originally kind of attached to me as a slightly pejorative term, but I thought I would reclaim it, yeah, I think it fits.
Excellent. To his right is Eugene Burmako. Now, can I say former PhD student at EPFL yet?
No, not yet. I'm actually having my private defense in 2 weeks, so still 2 weeks to enjoy.
What happens after that? You had the 2 weeks of enjoyment, and then it gets worse after you've done your defense? Surely it gets better.
Well, of course, the entire life of enjoyment.
Okay. And finally, at the far right is, well, your far left. Sorry, I'm doing this unempathetically. So to my far right, to your left, is Dmitry Petrashko, who is one of the two main developers of Dotty. And what have you been working on recently, Dima?
Well, recently I've been working on a talk for this conference.
and now that's interesting because you were not invited as a speaker.
Yeah.
Because we had some ground rules for the speakers we chose this year. When I say we, it's the royal we. I had some ground rules which I just arbitrarily invented, which was that no speakers from the previous year would speak this year, just to keep the program fresh and original. So I thought this panel was an opportunity to invite some of the alumni from Scala World up to have a presence. Though Dima managed to muscle his way into Andrew's talk earlier on Dotty, and I think Eugene did the same to Olaf's talk. You couldn't wait until next year when I will invite you back to talk about Scala Meta and Dotty.
Wow, that's a promise.
Wait for the call. We'll see. I'll check the videos. I haven't been to many talks, so I'll check the videos and then see what I think. See if you still got it. So I've got a few ideas for topics to talk about with the panel. If anyone has questions they want to ask, I can't really see you very well, so shout out quickly and loudly, but don't make lots of noise. Just short, sharp burst, so that I know that you want to speak, and I will try my best to allow that. Now, someone said something. There's a problem that if you say something, I can hear it, but the people watching the video afterwards can't. So we also need 2 volunteers who can run fast and pass microphones around. Can anyone here run fast? So that sounds like Mano. I can't see you, but I know.
You need to come and see me.
So
I'm in this corner.
Go and see Kurt in the corner. Okay, I can't see who that is. Is that Alex? Yeah. Okay. And I will then try and get the mic to you so you can speak, and then you can ask the question. But while that's going on, let's get started. Now, Miles, you've recently done some work on providing a solution to a well-known bug called SI2712, which tells you nothing about it, but everybody knows it by that name, or at least everybody who knows anything about it knows it by that
It's
name.
actually pronounced SI2712.
Not 2712.
Don't take that.
Yeah, I feel like my life has been a mistake up to this point. So SI2712. Can you tell us what it is and why it matters?
I'll have a try without aid of slides or diagrams or whatever. So SI2712 is a long-standing, I don't know if it's entirely fair to call it a bug, but bug stroke misfeature in Scala's type inference. which meant that type variables on methods or on class type definitions in general would only unify with type parameters at concrete use sites, which had exactly the same kind, exactly the same arity as types. So, for instance, it would mean that it would never be possible to unify, at least not without a bunch of tricks or boilerplate of one sort or another, to unify a partially applied binary type constructor, like say map or something, or function, function 1, for example. Function 1 takes 2 type arguments. It would never be possible to take a partially applied version of that as the solution for a type parameter with a single type variable. And it sounds like a really kind of obscure and an abstruse kind of thing, but actually it's quite a big deal in a whole ton of libraries, particularly libraries which make heavy use of higher-kinded types, so libraries like cats in particular, and Scala Z and things related to that. So over the years, it's kind of sat in the issue tracker, are sort of unfixed with kind of like various plaintive complaints about, please, can we have a fix for this, or something along those lines. I think at some point people had sort of come to the conclusion that actually it's just hopeless, that you know, there are inherent problems in the Scala type checker, which means we'll never be able to fix it. And you know, fortunately, it turns out that's just not true. It actually turns out to be not terribly hard to fix. And I think we're going to see. So it's in it's in Scala 2.12.
2.12.
Touche. And I think we will see it over the next year or so. We'll see the effects of that working its way through. I think there's going to be a whole bunch of really interesting things which will be maybe not strictly speaking enabled for the first time, but been enabled for the first time without the sort of distracting boilerplate and surrounding accidental complexity that's accumulated around these kinds of things to sort of work around the bug. So I think it's a really exciting thing, and I encourage everybody to check it out and play around with it and have a look and see what they can do with it in their own code.
How do you do that? How do you check it out?
Well, at this precise moment, the easiest way, well, there are two relatively easy ways to do it. If you want to do it and work with the code you use today, the easiest way to do it is to actually use the type-level Scala compiler, which is a drop-in replacement for Scala 2.11.8. If you go to GitHub type-level/Scala, you will find a README with complete instructions for how you can completely transparently drop it into your existing SBT builds and play around with it. And to do that, and you just have to enable a flag -y partial unification, and you're done. It's for 2.12. You just need to play around with a 2.12 release candidate as soon as there's one that actually works.
And this is the type level compiler.
Yes, that's right.
Do you get anything else with that?
You get a couple of other bug fixes, which are hopefully on their way to being merged in the Light and Scala compiler. One in particular, which for people, I mean, there've been quite a few people over the last couple of days talking about doing type class derivation using shapers, but also using other libraries that use a particular macro API call, known direct subclasses. I've come up with there's been a long-standing issue with that call, which basically means that there have been some very sort of peculiar sort of non-deterministic compile time dependent.
So the issue is if you have an ADT.
Yes,
seal traits
you're not. It's rather a bit of a crapshoot whether you actually see all the subtypes or not. Yeah. So I've come up with a partial fix for that, and in the cases where it doesn't actually fix the problem, you'll at least get a compile time error and give you some kind of hints on what to do about fixing the problem. So that's something which I think will be useful to lots of people, not just people using shapeless based type class derivation, but there's a whole bunch of other libraries that use this macro API to do similar kinds of things. So I think people will benefit from that. Hopefully that will land in Scala 2.12 fairly promptly. Another thing is the literal types stuff. So this is SIP23. This has been a long-standing a long-standing feature. It's available in DOSI currently. The original work on it was done by George Leontief. It was picked up by Adrian Moores, who ran out of time. And over the last few months, I've picked it up and hopefully got it more or less over the finishing line. It's a pull request against Lightbend Scala. Fingers crossed it'll go in very soon. And it's available now in 2.11.8. And it will be available now in a type level Scala corresponding to 2.12 when that's available as well.
So that should be very exciting to budding type astronauts out there.
Type astronauts will be rejoicing in the streets.
Now, going back to SI 2712, what does that mean for your libraries, Bill?
Well, that was there was the little discussion we had about right to left or left to right. So the whole notion of unifying these things, the reason that I think it's difficult to call it a bug is because it's not clear exactly how you would unify things. Just actually picking a direction is pretty simple and works, but I actually had a couple things that needed to go the other direction. But I didn't want to stand in the way, so I said, okay, never mind. But I'm hoping that a way that could be found so that the default is to go left to right, and that there's some way to mark things that they go the other direction. So I want to give you an example because, and it's really just about usability or human factors of library design. Because if you add something like, no matter how it's done, it would add complexity to the language, add another feature. So that's a bad thing, that's a downside. But the plus side, I think, is in libraries, it can make things simpler. And something I've been wanting to do for years and years is make matcher expressions that don't make sense, not compile, so you don't have to wait till your test fails to find out, oh, I just compared an int with a string. And the way that works actually requires that I partially apply a type that takes 2 type parameters so that it will fit in a hole that takes 1 type parameter, just like that same problem. And that one is called can equal. And from the usability perspective, what I want to do is have the types be on the same side as the equality expression at the value level, because that's just simpler for people. So if it's like 1 triple equals hello, or 1 should equal hello, the type that you're going to be looking for is int can equal string, not the other way around. And so basically that goes right to left, because the way it works with matchers is you figure out the right type first. So I need to say that's what that one is. So that's an example that has nothing to do with very hardcore functional programming libraries like CATS and Scala Z. It's very practical for just testing.
Don't be modest. Don't be modest, Bill.
Well, I mean, it's not just for people who use functors and monads in their code, right? It's actually pretty practical, is what I'm trying to say, and so that's sort of the thing, is like, how do you do that? Because the way we do it with the current is I'd have to somehow cross them, which is possible. There's always going to be a workaround, but it's like not as human friendly. That's my feeling.
Yeah.
So I completely agree with Bill. I mean, I think the reason the unification is done in the direction it is really a historical accident. I guess I was motivated by the type classes in CATS. They want to do left to right. Left to right is consistent with other things. I mean, if there is any directionality in Scala, it's definitely left to right by and large. But I can perfectly see that. For Bill's examples, it absolutely makes sense, and I don't think that it adds a great deal of additional complexity to if the default is left to right to have some kind of mechanism which indicates that a particular type class is expecting to resolve in the opposite direction. I do think though that the uniform one direction or another, as opposed to some more sophisticated unification algorithm, is actually the right thing to do. You might kind of think, well, okay, maybe there's some sort of clever way that we could avoid having to make a choice. I spent an awful lot of time trying to come up with other possible mechanisms for unification. I looked through a big ton of the literature as well. Most of them kind of, I mean, they tend to be optimized for particular cases, and they tend to produce completely bizarre and counterintuitive results as soon as you fall off the sort of the happy cases. And really, as far as I can make out, the only things that actually made a certain amount of intuitive sense in across the board was strictly left to right and strictly right to left. Everything else went crazy at some point. At least with left to right, when it stops working, it's kind of obvious why it stopped working and what you need to do about it. So I think something along the lines of just a non-default case switching things in the opposite direction is the right thing to do.
So Miles has described what I think is probably fair to say a reasonably esoteric corner of Scala that has big significance, but a lot of people won't come across it directly. Now Dotty is still in development, and choices are still being made. How fluid are those choices for details like the fix for SI 2712?
Well, first of all, because this affects type inference, and we care a lot about source compatibility in Dotty. If the specific implementation ships with 212, because we want to cross-compile among two compilers, it means we should have this similar implementation. But then we're also up to looking for long-term solutions which can cover both use cases.
So how do we prevent, or do we need to prevent potential fragmentation of source, which can be only compiled with one version of Scala, type level Scala, or Dotty?
Well, I believe that not a single feature on its own would ever be worth it to fragment the community. As a community, we create the name for Scala. As a community, the good name of Scala creates the fact that there are jobs for all of us. So it's very important for everybody who participates in compiler development and have their own compiler to maintain versions compatible and to be in a dialogue to make sure that Scala still is the same language. And
I think that has happened, particularly with the fix to SI 2712. Does it really matter?
It really matters.
Okay.
We still have disagreements about the name.
Yes. Naming is hard.
Yeah.
It could be 271 too, couldn't it?
Yeah, and it can be DI, Dotty issue, not Scala issue.
Right. So source compatibility and binary compatibility are probably going to be issues over the next few years.
So
what Miles?
I was going to say, have they ever not been issues?
They certainly have been issues, but it has been typically a linear issue before, particularly with source compatibility. You make changes from one major version of Scala to the next, and then you make further changes. You don't tend to branch off in different directions. With Dotty, Scala 2 as released by Lightbend and Scala 2 from type level, we could potentially have a more complicated graph that we have to navigate.
So I think as far as the type level Scala compiler is concerned, everybody involved in developing the Scala type type level Scala compiler uses Scala in their day jobs and wants to be able to take advantage of the features that are included currently, will be included, hopefully will be merged in Lightbend Scala in their day jobs right now. So from our point of view, we have there's no point in this exercise unless we're in a situation that we can use the type level Scala compiler with all of the existing artifacts which are part of the ecosystem. That's absolutely a priority. I don't see there being any issue of divergence between Lightbend Scala and type level Scala of any significance at all, really. I mean, our intention is really that everything. So the current policy of the rebooted Scala, type level Scala initiative, is that nothing will be included in type level Scala unless it is already exists as a pull request against Lightbend Scala, with a reasonable degree of assurance that there are no. With a reasonable prospect that it will be merged in a future Lightbend Scala release. And so I suppose from that point of view, you could view type-level Scala as being kind of, if you like, a staging build of if you like, mainstream Scala, the Scala you use on a daily basis, which has some additional bug fixes and additional features, which will ideally be merged into the main line as quickly as possible.
Okay. Now, Eugene, Scala Meta has maybe the potential to help with source compatibility. Could you talk a bit about that?
Well, as a matter of fact, yeah. I think that's one of the good applications for Scala Meta. And recently, during one of the advisory board meetings of the Scala Center, there were some concerns. There were voiced the concerns that the transition from Scala to Dotty needs to be made more smooth. And as a result, we have come up with a plan that there's going to be a rewrite tool that will help migrate features that work differently in Scala and Dotty in the case when organizations want to migrate their code bases. And how this works, the mechanism is actually pretty simple, though we definitely need a solid metaprogramming foundation to do that. In essence, in Scala Meta, we provide a library that models the language with all its dialects, how we call this in Scala Meta, with all its variations, be it Scala 2.11, 2.12, maybe type-level Scala, maybe Dotty, all of them. And when we have this consistent language model provided as a standalone library which is not associated with any of these implementations, because if it were, it would be kind of unfair, and probably we would have less support for others. And now that we have Scala Meta, this language model that covers dialects that are prevalent in the community.
So what's the production readiness of Scala Meta right now?
At the moment, recently at Scala Days Berlin 2016, we've released the first version of Scala Meta. So the current version is 1.1.0, which supports abstract syntax trees that model various dialects of Scala. And in the future, we're currently working on that. We strive to get to version 2, which will support things like type inference, type check, and name resolutions, and so on and so forth. So we like to use this classification that what's currently supported in the first version is the syntactic API, that is how you parse the code and how you represent it, including all the minor syntactic details like comments and formatting. And version 2, it will bring support for semantic APIs, the aforementioned name resolution and others.
So version 2 is not ready yet. You're finishing a PhD, and you announced a few months ago that you're going to be starting a job at Twitter.
That's correct.
Congratulations.
Well, thanks. Thank you, guys.
What does that job mean for Meta? Will you have the ability to work on it?
Yes, I talked a little bit about that during my Scala Days talks, both at New York and Berlin. So here I'll be like super brief. Together with the guys at Twitter, we came up with an arrangement that half of my time, half of my paid time, I'll be doing whatever I want. And at the moment, this whatever I want, it's Scala Meta definitely.
So what proportion of your time at the moment is spent doing whatever you want?
100% of time, of course.
I'm glad you're enjoying being here.
That's right. It's such a pleasure. So anyway, what this means for...
So sincere.
What this means concretely for Scala Meta is that there will still be continued effort towards making version 2 a reality. So even at the moment, I was talking about this as if maybe got an impression that Scala Meta without a semantic API is incomplete. But as a matter of fact, people have already building tools on top of it, and it's pretty solid. Just one example, Olaf, who's currently working together with us at EPFL, he used Scala Meta version 1 to build the Scala FMT, a Scala code formatter tool, which parses Scala code using Scala Meta and then uses the comprehensive model that Scala Meta provides to format code according to one of the style guidelines. And I know for a fact that some companies, some open source projects, they have been migrating to Scala FMT to end this discussion of, code format wars, essentially. That's just one example. Another example, we'll probably get into that territory later, is the whole macro story, right? So thanks to Scala Meta version 1, it's become possible to write macro annotations which use just syntactic APIs. And to have these macro annotations executed in both the Scala compiler and the IntelliJ IDE, and also recently, as Olaf and I demonstrated on the workshop yesterday, recently in the Dotty compiler. So thanks to what we've released with Scala Meta version 1, it is already possible to fulfill part of the promise that we started the Scala Meta project with. That is macros that are compatible across different versions of the compiler.
Okay, thank you. So, I mean, it's pretty clear that Eugene will have half his time to work on Scala Meta, so we hope to see progress there, and half your time at doing whatever Twitter want you to do. Jon, when I introduced you, I listed 3 or 4 things you're involved in. You must be very busy. Where do you find the time to go to the gym?
Great. That's the one question I get. Actually, I was hoping to talk about the type level compiler a bit, you know?
Well, yeah, talk about the type level compiler, then we can talk about the gym.
Yes, then we can talk about the gym. So,
by the way, when Jon was arranging his accommodation for Scala World, his #1 priority was which hotel has the best gym.
That's a fact, and it's North Lakes, in case you're wondering. They have an awesome gym.
The gym was used, I think, a couple of days before Jon arrived by Bradley Wiggins and Mark Cavendish when they did the tour of Britain. Anyway, we're not selling hotels here. Tell us about type level compiler, because I think you've started using it recently.
Yeah, actually, we have started using it, and it's thanks to the excellent work that Miles and co have done on that. And basically, I want to emphasize here that, like, type inference for partially applied types, it's not really an esoteric thing, actually. It's our bread and butter. We do pure functional programming in Scala, and we have a very large open source Scala code base that's written in that style. And as a result, we have probably thousands or more of places where we partially apply a type. And of course, all the libraries we're using, they do that too. And so little tiny bugs or inconveniences in Scala C, they percolate and they lead to large amounts of code boilerplate and just developer pain. And you have to factor your libraries in different ways. So I want to emphasize that as sort of the only person sitting at the table that is CTO who employs a large number of Scala developers working on a production system that has to ship and it has to generate revenue and all that fun stuff, I want to say that bug fixes like the one Miles worked on, they are super relevant and they're super important to the future of the Scala community, because the amount of developer effort, developer hours that they can save, and the amount of productivity that we can get out of a bug fix like that is just amazing. And that's why when this bug fix came out in the type level compiler, and I learned about the policy that Miles elucidated, which is basically we're not even going to ship anything in type level compiler unless it's already a pull request against the Lightbend compiler. I was like, yes, let's do that. So we adopted the compiler. It literally is as easy as he says. We adopted it same day, and the next day we had code in production that was utilizing this feature extensively. And now our code won't even compile with the Scala compiler. Not yet, until that pull request is accepted.
Oh, well, that one has been. So you're
awesome. Okay.
212.
We're safe. We're safe. Okay. So I just want to say, you know, this as a production commercial user of Scala, the work that Type Level is doing is really, really important, and has a big effect on the very large and commercial code base that we're trying to cultivate here.
So your experience was very good. You said it was very easy to get started and start using type level Scala instead of Lightbend. What's the experience like for Dotty? Can you try out Dotty as easily, Dmitry?
John, could I jump in and ask a question? Ooh,
yes,
very
yes,
loud.
by all means. You have the mic already, or a very loud voice? Who is this?
Hey, it's Cyrus. Hello.
Hi, Cyrus.
It's very. Ooh, hello. Yeah. Okay. So I think it's. I'm really pleased to hear. Sorry, I'm like. I can see you guys looking very lost. I'm in the middle.
I've got you.
Yes. Cool. So I think it's very nice to hear that the adoption story is so smooth, and I think it's really positive that that it's allowed us to address an issue which has been long-standing, which has affected a large amount of the community. I think that if we look at the history of Scala over the last few years, it wouldn't be the first time when we look at SI 2712 that that we see an issue which has sort of failed to get fixed for a long time, and that's caused a lot of division within the community. I guess my concern would be, I think the last couple of days is really testament to how engaged this community is in trying to improve the ecosystem. But my concern would be that I don't think that forking the ecosystem is necessarily the best way to go about achieving that effect. And I wonder whether the panel has an opinion on how we could work better together to streamline the process of getting these things fixed in core, rather than having to fork things to get these things fixed.
So I'll respond to that immediately. So we are working together. There's been a huge amount of collaboration between the people working on the type level fork. If you use GitHub, you fork projects. This is not a dirty word. It's the right thing to do. It's a branch in Git.
But what about the knock-on effects of that?
Well, the knock-on effects, I don't see any downside.
What about if there's code that gets out there that people see and they expect to be able to compile with Scala? Because it looks like Scala.
To quote one of your panelists, my code no longer compiles with the Lightbend compiler.
It no longer compiles with a Lightbend compiler, which isn't yet released, but which is about to be released. So Jon was referring to the SI2712 fix. The pull request has been merged. There is a backport pull request against 2.11.9. So it should be in within. I can see no reason why that shouldn't be in the next 2.11 release. The type level Scala is basically the next release of Lightbend, or at least it's a staging compiler which contains fixes and features which in due course will end up in the mainline compiler. And there's a really good reason for this. I use Scala for my day job. It's no use to me to have a compiler that doesn't compile my code.
That's right. And I just want to say on that note, I view the type level compiler as almost like an early release of what the Lightbend compiler will ultimately be. At least hopefully. Hopefully it's an early release of what the Lightbend compiler will be. And if we end up as a company making a decision to use one of these features that has a PR against real Scala C in there, sitting there, it's merged into a type level compiler and we start using it, we're going to use it because it saves us an enormous amount of pain.
So are you effectively strong-arming features into Lightbend Scala?
Look at this guy. No, I think what we're doing is we're providing people with an opportunity to actually use features and fixes in production systems, or at least just in real life, rather than leave them sitting around in the issue tracker for years and years and years. And I just don't see a downside to this.
So Cyrus also asked about the community process. Now I want to ask Bill, because you have had you are a community representative on the Scala Center Advisory Board.
Yes.
And you have a say in what the board recommends to the Scala Center. What would you say to people out there who maybe want certain features in Scala?
Oh, who want them in Scala?
Yeah, who are not satisfied with the state of people
well,
like Miles, but
yeah.
Let's say someone with Miles' concerns, but without Miles' capability of fixing them. If you can imagine such a person.
Yeah, I think actually the process is working as it's going today, and that it's always a trade-off between how quickly you make things better and how painless it is to upgrade, or how painful, I guess. And I think different communities have done it differently. So Python went this big jump to Python 3, and it was actually didn't really work. And so I hope we avoid that. But then Java kept complete backwards compatibility I mean, they didn't do anything for a really long time. Now they're doing interesting things, but it's like they were
But
stuck,
arguably
right?
that didn't work
Yeah.
either.
I think that's too far in that direction. So I think right now the way we're going is kind of a decent balance. We
So
are making
it's
progress,
a
but
happy-
we really care about helping people migrate so that each step along the way is.
But is it a happy
doable.
medium? Is it a happy medium, or is it the worst of both worlds?
No, I think it's a happy medium.
You're reliably optimistic.
Oh.
Aye, that's not a
Yeah.
bad thing.
No, yeah.
We have another question.
So to extend on the answer, there's a lot of improvements which can be done for Scala ecosystem actually without changing the language. So Dota is a good example of this. Though internals are entirely different, we're trying hard and we're succeeding in it to keep it be the compiler for the same language. I believe that there's a lot of improvement which can be done without breaking either binary compatibility or source compatibility by a lot of people who are in this room. If they try to tackle things which affect their everyday time, job like compilation speed, like efficiency of the generated code, like even binary compatibility with Java for future versions.
Do you think that holds Dotty back at all by maintaining that compatibility?
Well, if we're designing language from scratch, we could have done a lot of things differently, but it will be a language with zero adoption. So the question is, what do you prefer to build a wonderful language
Like
for,
Idris, say.
yeah, for a very small community? Or would you prefer to have a language where the community is big and have an impact? So Dotty is definitely going the second way. We're considering every change. So one example that I illustrated in the talk that I didn't officially do today was that we've been considering improving mixing and changing some things about initialization order, which have been fixing a lot of puzzlers and a lot of funny behavior when you can both observe the past and observe the future. And we decided not to go this path because there is no decent migration path at all. And you'll have the same code which compiles differently in both compilers.
So we couldn't use Meta to identify, Scala Meta to identify those cases where
Yes.
it would fail?
Yes.
Yes, we can't.
We more or less can't because you will need to gather the knowledge about the entire Scala ecosystem in order to make a decision about a single line of code.
Is that true, Eugene?
Well, there are things that, of course, we can hack this up. But on a serious note, Scala Meta provides information about a subset of information that's available to the compiler. Most of the things that the compiler knows about your program, we can analyze and we can store somewhere. But there are indeed things that, for example, happen in the backend that are not so easy to analyze, and that's actually out of scope of Scala Meta.
Now,
Hello?
Yes, I thought we had a question coming.
To your left, John. Hello.
Hello, is that Tim?
Yes, it is.
You have a nice halo.
Well, that's wonderful. That's how it usually is. So I just wanted to point out, because the gentleman was asking about a fork, and I was just looking at the panel and thinking, well, for those people who don't know, nearly everyone in this room uses software written by the people on the panel. And the only reason that software exists is because they either forked something or went off and actually had the initiative to actually build that software. So Bill, if you don't know, is the owner of Scala Test. Jon made Blue Eyes, which inspired Spray, which inspired which then became Akka HTTP. Jon and Miles are like the longest people in the Scala community. Like, and both Eugene and Dmitry, their research like basically paves the way for the future of Scala. So like, is a fork a bad thing? No. Like, it's bread and butter of what we do. It has to happen. And so I don't feel like, like Jon, as a large user, 2712 is fixing an actual pain point we have. And I just wanted to kind of like invite everyone to, I guess, for a round of applause. Like, these guys have been working in the community for nearly a decade and, building software for free so that we can make a living. And, we really appreciate that. The community really appreciates you. And, just thank you for all the work that you do for free. And please keep doing it. Everyone loves you.
Thank you. Thanks, Tim.
I'll buy you a beer later.
So do we have any other questions from the audience? We have about 5 minutes left if we want to get away by, let's say, 20 past. we've had 2 days of talks. You've had lots of things to think about, and you have no questions. Does anyone on the panel have any questions for anyone else on the panel?
Right there.
We have a question. Okay. Run, Alex.
So I believe not many people might be interested in this, but how would runtime compilation work with Dotty or Scala.meta? Or is that not within the scope of Scala.meta?
Okay, sure. I'd be glad to answer. Runtime compilation has indeed been the baseline for some of the advanced techniques that happen in our community. So with functionality known as toolboxes, which is currently available in Scala 2.10 and Scala 2.11, it is possible to compose code at runtime, then compile it, and then execute it. So it's a wonderful technique for advanced things like staging, for instance. On the other hand, even though it's a useful feature, currently focus of Scala Meta, it has been more on the tooling side and more on the more on the support for Scala macros. Nonetheless, we remember important use cases of Scala Reflect, and we definitely value input from the community. So at the moment, as you've seen, Scala Meta is actively growing, and it is just the right time to join us. So probably drop by our Gitter channel and explain your use cases. So I think it may be possible to accommodate the use cases of runtime code generation. Maybe not in the form that is currently provided by Scala Reflect, but I think it may be possible to do something with that. So let's chat, let's communicate, and build better Scala.
Thank you. Any other questions?
I actually have a question.
Yeah.
Is Scala World happening next year?
Oh, that's a good question. I was actually going to close out with that. Yeah, I think so. I think. I think, in fact, we'll run it from the 16th to the 19th of September 2017. You can put that date in your diaries. I am speaking to the Reg Ed Centre about holding it here again next year. I'm already thinking about some new hikes we can do. I was driving around yesterday through the mountains, and I found some great places we could hike. We had some cycling this year. I don't know how many of you knew that. How about boating next year? Yeah. Is anyone up for that? Yeah, we get some canoes. I mean, we keep trying more and more adventurous activities, and nobody's died yet. So yeah, boating next year. Excellent. So 16th to 19th. The 16th is a Saturday. Hopefully next year we'll have less issues with finding hotels. By the way, could I just have a show of hands? Who found it difficult to find somewhere to stay?
What do you mean you booked for us, but it was really difficult to get there?
So a few people found it difficult. I found it very difficult. I was managing a total of 80 rooms in and around the area, which is why we had to book places up to I think an hour and 5 minutes away. So maybe with a little bit of earlier preparation, and I think I'll probably Monday I'll start work on next year's schedule, and it might be ready in time. Okay. I don't think anyone is dying to ask any more questions. I think maybe you're dying to get back to Penrith and have a refreshing beer. So we will wrap up there. I would like to say thanks to a few people. First of all, thank you to the panel. We have a round of applause. I would like to say thank you especially to the speakers who have, by and large, come a very long way. They've taken a lot of time out to prepare and deliver their talks. And although I haven't been to as many as I would have liked to, I've heard very good things about all of them, without exception. I've asked people what they thought, and the feedback has been universally good. So thank you very much to the speakers. Can we have a round of applause for them, please? And as a gift to each of the speakers, I've got the set of the Wainwright guides to walking in Lakeland Fells. I've given some speakers their gifts. I haven't given others their gifts. If I've forgotten to give you one, will you please come to me and ask, because you deserve this this delightful little English book, and I will happily give you one of them. Finally, I would like to thank my helpers. I did have help. I did need help. First of all, Barnaby and Hraban, are either of you here still? Thank you very much. We had some great and funny introductions to the speakers. And I would like to thank Ida and Natalia. Are you here? They've been very helpful with organising the goodie bags and a lot of the registration process. So can we have a round of applause for them, even though they're not here? They're coming to the speakers and sponsors dinner later, so we will pass on that applause to them as best we can. And thank you to the sponsors. And I mean it when I say this couldn't have happened without you. We take a lot of money in ticket sales, but it doesn't cover all the costs. So the sponsors are a necessary part, and they do add to the conference. And many of them are hiring. And check out the names on the banner over there. If you're looking for a job in Scala, speak to the sponsors. They've chosen to sponsor this one. They knew when they sponsored that it was a conference that attracted some of the best people in the Scala community. So it could well be a good match. And with that, I will say thank you.
Oh, sorry. Go on. Well, I thought he was say, with that, let's go, and I was about to chip in and say, and we should also thank Jon for organising a fantastic conference.
I was about to get to that. Thank you very much. I was going to say thank you to the audience for being a great audience and for providing all the interesting discussions that people have been having. Thank you. And without further ado, let's head out and well, I'm going to the restaurant with the speakers, but you're all welcome to descend upon Penrith and drink it dry. See you next year.